In this video, we will see how we can extract masks from a height map such as the one we built in the previous episode. Substance Designer is all about reusing and combining useful information, so it's really important that you get into that mindset where you ask yourself, will I have a use for that later? Or, hey, maybe I can reuse that bit I made earlier. It means you need to both anticipate your next steps and make the most of your previous steps. Again, think non-linear. To make it more clear, let's get back to where we left off. At this point, the height map of our fabric material is more or less done. The key elements are all in place. We have the embroidered ornament here. The trim is here, the gemstones as well. And right now we're seeing all of this in this gray and flat sort of preview state. But soon we'll have to add color, roughness, metallic information, and so on. And for that, we'll need to be able to treat each of these elements separately. So for example, maybe I want the embroidered ornament to be a bit darker than the rest of the fabric. Maybe they're made out of a different yarn, I don't know. So I need to be able to isolate them to tell designer, okay, do this, but only to this element. Same goes for every part that I want to distinguish from the rest. Hopefully you now understand why we need to do this, so let's get to it. Alright, let's start with the embroidered ornaments. That should be fairly easy. You may be tempted to reuse this mask here that drives the tile sampler. That wouldn't be a good idea. Remember, we wanted to have these sort of jagged outlines that are much more realistic, and we don't have that here. Now we could also take that level here, adjust it and call it a day, but there's an even simpler way. Remember, we used the height blend to add this second weave, and I told you then that it's a very handy node because it also outputs a mask. And this mask is perfect because it accurately reflects how much of the foreground sticks out from the background. So we're just going to reuse that. Now to save this for later, we can use the dot node again, but this time let's make it more interesting. So sure, I have this pin that I can drag to wherever I need it, but the thing is, we're gonna need that mask in the very last steps, so all the way up there. And if I were to drag a connection to the other end like that, chances are it will cross other connections and turn my graph into a zigzagging mess. So instead, what we're gonna do, we're going to keep it next to its input. And with the dot node selected, you see that we have a few parameters. And we can give it a name. So let's call it ornament weave mask. Okay. Then let's move away from there. And here's what you can do now. Grab another dot. Then in that drop-down menu here, select the input you want to call. And this new dot now indicates which input it's referencing. To see it more clearly, we can also zoom out and select the node, and we can see its connection in the form of this hashed line here. And what we did here is use the dot node as a portal. Portals are great to avoid overlapping or crossing connections and really help keeping your graph tidy. I personally like to be able to visualize the connections and see at one glance what goes where, but when two nodes are really far apart, I tend to rely on portals now. Alright, let's delete that for now. So we extracted one mask from the ornament weave. Let's now move on to the trim. I'd like to handle all the trim elements as one entity so that we can turn them all into the same golden hue. The problem is that we dealt with them separately. Like we added this row first, then this one, and that was probably a mistake because now if we want to create one mask out of all that, it's just a bit more complex. But no worries, there are many ways we can get away with it. The tedious solution would be to reassemble them all with blends, like that, and then that, and then use a threshold to get a clean black and white mask. That's 1, 2, 3 nodes. It's not that bad. But when you think about it, the threshold could work just as well on the actual height here. See? Because the trim is much lighter than the rest of the fabric, the threshold should work just fine. Here we go. The only thing is that it's picking up on bits of fabric as well, and to prevent that, we can just soften a little the input with a blur. Like so. And that's it. We now have our trim mask. Let's dock this to a dot node. Trim mask. All right. Last but not least, we have the radial ornaments. These ones are a bit trickier because there's a lot going on and we definitely want a more differentiated approach. The first thing that comes to mind is that we need separate masks for the mountings and for the gemstones because they are going to have very different properties. So let's blend the mountings together. Run a threshold again. Then do the same for the gemstones. So this one and this one. Okay, so far so good, but you see that we run into a problem here. Our masks are not placed or tiled like the final row here. So what we can do for now is just duplicate that transform here, Ctrl D, so that we have the exact same values, and plug our masks to it. Now this is a makeshift solution because, as you probably guess, if we move this here, it's not going to update here. And so these three transforms are actually not synchronized. For now it's okay because we don't intend to move anything, but that's still something we'll need to address when the time comes to expose parameters. Okay, let's just add our dot nodes. So mountings, mask, and gemstones mask. And that's it. So in this video, we saw why and how to extract masks from a node arrangement. And we saw it poses some challenges when you want to single out specific elements. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind when you build your material. All right, is our height map done yet? Not really, but we're almost there. Before we move on to the color, I'd like to take a moment to refine a thing or two with you. So in the next episode, we'll see how we can make things a bit more realistic by adding small imperfections and paying attention to details.